Very interesting breaking news. Hunter Biden intends to plead guilty to federal tax charges. Hunter Biden will plead guilty? Holy moly. What's going on here? Well, somebody who knows about Democrats and guilt far better than maybe anyone alive. Somebody who's uncovered more than anyone alive on the duplicitous nature of what Democrats can get away with whilst in office is the great Tom Fitton of Judicial Watch, who joins the show live now. This is breaking news, Tom. I'm really glad that you are joining the program this morning. Thank you. Hunter Biden pleading guilty. Not sure that I'm not sure I saw this coming. He pleaded not guilty and then fought tooth and nail in Delaware against the gun charge, but now against the tax charges, he's saying I'm guilty in California. What does it say?
I think there's an indication there. I'll just warn, I'm not a criminal defense lawyer. In fact, I'm not a lawyer. But based on my significant experience as a layman, some of which is unfortunate, my guess is he's pleading guilty as part of a plea deal. And the DOJ agreed to let him plead guilty. And so there's now a path forward for the regime to avoid an embarrassing trial, however outrageously limited it was in terms of narrowing the charges to protect Joe. Nevertheless, they didn't want information coming out. And so there was an incentive for both Hunter and the Biden, Harris, Garland Justice Department to keep all of this out of court.
Does this say something about Trump's chances in November? Does this say that people are hedging? We might as well we better clean this up right away.
Well, in the least, it's a close run thing in November, right? No, I don't think anyone would dispute that. And so these are the sorts of political calculations that the Justice Department makes when proceeding against high-level political individuals. Look, as far as I'm concerned, it doesn't matter who the target is. I don't trust the Justice Department on anything. And I half jokingly say, I want to defend Hunter, because I just think, he's obviously gotten a get out of jail free pass, get out of jail card on a lot of issues. But some of the decision making is as political as anything. And that goes for Republicans and Democrats. The Justice Department, for high-level people, political people, it's not a rule of law question. It's usually a political question.
So as we look at what's happening with President Trump, we see Trump lawyers in January 6th cases today. It seems like as the fates turn against Kamala Harris, and we're starting to see sort of a massive descent in polling. She's not adding to any coalition. The people are waking up from the sugar high. The trends are looking quite scary if you're sitting there in Kamala Harris's camp. And all the leaks coming out of her camp is that people are very worried, especially about Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, North Carolina, Arizona, and Georgia. So as that begins, you now see Trump back in court today, or at least Trump's lawyers in court today arguing against Jack Smith. Donald Trump will be sentenced. I think he'll have to physically be there on September 18th in New York to get sentenced. And everything seems to be ratcheting up just in time to ensure that maybe Trump's behind bars by election day. Do you think that there's a chance of that happening?
That would be a radical step, but I wouldn't put it past merging. And if I were on Trump's team, if I were President Trump, I'd be very concerned that he'd order Trump be immediately taken into custody. I mean, this is a lunatic fringe that's running the justice system, specifically with respect to this case. And their contempt for the Supreme Court in this process. The Supreme Court essentially said, everyone who's charging Trump, you need to go back to the drawing board and make sure everything from the get-go complies with our constitutional direction here, that the immunity that a president has be taken into account at every stage of the proceeding. And that wasn't done here, obviously. Some Clinton appointing the federal court didn't want to help Trump out. And I think the question is there going to be a Second Circuit appeal, which is the circuit that handles New York, or will the Supreme Court have to come in and tell Merchant to stand down? I think that might be the result, because I do think there's this kind of, the Trump derangement syndrome is a very real issue, and anti-Trump animus is destroying our justice system with the courts who are caught up in this TDS.
Yeah. So I guess my question is, how does Jack Smith carry on? Like, how does Jack Smith continue on after the smackdown in Florida? It does seem like wild to me, like parallel universes, that Jack Smith can have such a professional disgrace and humiliation, which of course he's like quite used to at this point, but he can have that in Florida and then move right back up to DC and begin operating with Tanya Chutkan today.
Well, he's got friendlier courts up here in DC. He's got Chutkan, who's on his side. The appellate court's likely to be on his side on the issue about whether he's a valid appointee and not a rogue prosecutor. Chutkan, I'm sure, is going to continue to harass Trump up until the election and try to time. She said today the election has no impact on her timing. Well, of course it should have an impact on her timing. To say it doesn't is, suggests to me it's the exact opposite. Of course it needs to have an impact on her timing, especially since what we're talking about are largely ministerial issues, right? In the sense that there's no deadline. So to create fake deadlines to put Trump in a corner before the election is political. But we should expect more of the same from Chutkan. And hopefully they recognize the Supreme Court is there's no harm if they win, right? And if they lose, they lose. But it's all or nothing now. So they're going to exercise every act of gamesmanship they can to further compromise the election. Because I want to go back and tell your listeners and viewers something. The election's already compromised. And the question is, will the compromised nature of the election result in an outcome that the people don't trust?
Can you unpack that? Are you saying that the election is compromised due to the amount of lawfare that we've seen, President Trump having spent months now sitting in a courtroom and not campaigning, and everything from mugshots to assassination attempts?
That's right. He's facing the threat of jail. How is that not distracting from his campaign? He spent weeks in a courtroom unnecessarily. He spent untold time and resources and campaign resources dealing with this lawfare. That's putting your thumb on the scales, and obviously that benefited the opposition campaign. At the time, we thought it was the Biden campaign. It turns out it was some sort of ghost campaign. The nominee to be determined at a time to be at some uncertain time. I don't even know if the nominee is determined now, given the way things are. I tell you, and let's not pretend that it won't be further compromised, as I say, with some crazy attempt to jail Trump up there in September. But on the other hand, maybe the federal courts will say we're stopping this circus.